Hi, welcome to this screencast on why Ruby is acceptable Lisp. This is based on the blog post by Eric Kidd, and let's get started. Paul Graham in Painters and Hackers book actually goes through different languages and how it compares to Lisp. And one of the example that he uses is an accumulator. And this example is used to illustrate how Lisp is a dense functional language, and the Ruby equivalent of the Lisp's accumulator is also very concise. So Ruby compares well as a functional language. So the accumulator basically is just kind of like a global counter. So you would define a method. Let's just call it accumulator. And it takes a number and basically returns the lambda. Okay, so it just returns a proc object. And what happens, my accumulator equals, let's call accumulator with some value, so call 2, and then call the accumulator. So n is the initial value, so 2 will be the initial value. Let's call it with 1 and print the value. So we have 2 plus 1, that prints 3, and then again call this, let's pass in 2 this time, so this time this would be 5. There it is, so it's 5, so it keeps accumulating the values, kind of like a global counter. So you can see the power of using proc objects and how it basically allows us to write concise code. And if you have read some of the Ruby code that others have written, there is a way that you actually chain calls together. You may already be familiar with the arrays collect method. In Rails, you can do a collect and provide certain condition within this block. In this case, I have n, and I'm just going to double each number, multiply the number with itself. So what's going on here, if I print this, you will get a resulting array, which is first value times itself, 1 times 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9. So the collect method takes a block and it actually returning an array. Okay, so but there is a subtle thing going on here. The collect method is enumerable, one of the enumerable thing, and whoever is actually including it, it's returning self basically. It's just not just returning a data structure. This is a powerful concept. And if you write a method and you do something and you just return self, if you return that particular object itself, it allows you to chain calls like this. You can collect and then you can do a reject based on certain condition. If it satisfies n modulo 3 equals 1, I want to reject it. It will go through 1, 4, and 9, and anything that satisfies this condition will be rejected from that array. So the only element remaining is 9. Okay, this Persian operator, if you're not familiar, it's just the same as modulo. If you do 1 modulo 2, you get 1. And if you just do the operator kind of a thing, concise, if there is a remainder, it will print 1. If there is no remainder, when 2 is divided by 2, there is no remainder, it will print 0. So that's how that operates. Okay, so it allows the chaining of calls, which is a powerful technique, and that will be useful for you when you're actually writing programs. And even in web applications, this is very useful if you know this technique. And there is another example in that a blog post where you have calculating some natural number. It's actually taking a function 0. Don't worry about the actual mathematical thing. Let's just focus on the functional aspect of this Ruby program. So it basically operates on that this number is initialized here, and then we could just call that block and provide that value. We provide that block a value which is incremented by 1, and we can call this say each natural number, and you can pass the block, it just prints value of n. Each natural number, and okay, this you should not pass in. Okay, function call. Yes, if you're passing in as a parameter, okay, this needs to be lambda function, lambda, and then the entire thing. In this case, it's just an argument, and it runs and it keeps running forever. Let's stop this. It loops forever. Okay, so in this case, we have a named variable, and you can call this thing. Let's say if it's anonymous thing, we don't really need a name. We can take it one step further. We can remove this. Any method is capable of taking a block. So you don't have to make it as an argument. You can just pass it like this. I've already covered this thing in blocks basics. Okay, so in this case it's anonymous. We don't need this anymore. We can just say yield to that anonymous function, and it will work. So what this yield buys us is we can chain calls together by calling one, and then the resulting value is again being called on the same method different on the class, and so on. So and that's one way how Ruby is really concise. Another way is the macros like things which you can define, and Rails belongs to has many is also another good example how you can write macros kind of a thing. So that's it for the screencast. Even though the concept is very subtle, they are really powerful and good to know. Hope you learned something from this, and if you enjoyed it, please recommend me. I'm working with Rails. Thank you.